All right, welcome. This is Scanning, or what the heck is iambic pentameter anyway? Many of you may not know, but being part of an English major means that there's learning the craft to poetry, and so many of you have probably heard things like, oh, Shakespeare writes in iambic pentameter, or English is an iambic language, but you might not have ever known what this means. So that's what we are going to learn today. Meter is the rhythmic structure of a poem, and it's based on the stressed and unstressed syllables of individual words and then how those words are grouped. Now, sometimes it's difficult to figure out where the stress is in a word, particularly words that are 3 or 4 syllables long, and you're going to drive yourself nuts trying to go, is it people or is it people? Or however it is. So one of the ways that you can figure this out is use the dictionary. It doesn't matter if it's a paper one or online, but go to the bookshelf, find the dictionary, dust it off, and you can look it up upwards, and it will tell you where the stress is. So in poetry, when we are scanning, we mark stressed syllables with a slash above the top and unstressed syllables with a little U-shaped symbol, because scanning is a visual practice. So what you're going to do is open a book or copy a poem, and you are literally going to take a pencil and you are going to mark stressed and unstressed syllables for the first part of this. Okay, now for some Shakespeare. Let's take the first line of Shakespeare's famously famous Sonnet 18, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, or as I like to call it, the Hallmark Sonnet. Every Hallmark card ever loves to quote this particular sonnet. But if you take a double syllable word like compare, how many syllables does it have? Well, 2. Where's the stress placed? Is it compare or is it compare? Or I'm not even saying it right, but is it, which syllable would we place the stress? If you don't know, look it up. Okay, and we see this from the dictionary, and we find out that the stress is actually on the second syllable. And the thing you need to know for scanning more so than anything else is that poets are very, very tricky. So once you know the actual grammatical place a stress is placed, you have to think to yourself, okay, this may hold true for the poem itself. In fact, poets are known for inverting word order so that they can keep the meter the way they want it and the rhyme scheme. Sometimes they actually will make you stress a word differently so that you can, so it has a particular effect in a poem. So when you look it up in the dictionary, realize that that may not be actually how the poet is using it in the poem, but it's an excellent place to start. Okay. Once you have figured out where all the stressed and unstressed syllables are to the best of your ability, then you need to divide them, and those divisions are known as feet, and feet are divided in groups of 2 or 3. Why are they called feet? I honestly have no idea. Just go with it. Okay. And once you have divided the feet, you will count them, and this is what will help you determine the meter of a poem. So the types of feet are iamb, which is a 2-beat foot comprised of an unstressed and then followed by a stressed syllable. This is why we say Shakespeare wrote in iambic pentameter, because the feet in his poems most often follow this particular type of foot. A trochee is the opposite of the iamb, so the stressed, unstressed. Pyrrhic, and you can see it's kind of got a soft sound in the middle. It is a 2-beat foot comprised of 2 unstressed syllables. A spondee is a 2-beat foot comprised of 2 stressed syllables. And your anapaests and your dactyls are your only 3-beat feet. I don't even know at this point. So an anapaest is a 3-beat foot comprised of 2 unstressed and an ending stressed syllable, and a dactyl is the reverse of this. These last two are often used for a particular effect. Anapaests are used for oftentimes a soft sound that they want a hard stress to follow, sometimes like waves crashing on a shore. Dactyl, poets will want the hard sound first, followed by a lightning by the 2 soft beats following. Here's what it looks like with words. Okay, And as you can see, as I was talking about with the anapes and the dactyl, particularly the dactyl, this is a line out of Tennyson's poem, Charge of the Light Brigade, which is about a cavalry unit that goes to its bloody death due to basically the idiocy of its leaders. But you can see when he's writing half a league, half a league, half a league onward, that lightning, by putting the three dactyls followed by the trochaic foot, it sounds like horses' hooves, right? Half a league, half a league, half a league onward. And this really brings up a good point that I'd like to stress here, is that poetry is a medium that's meant to be read out loud, not just to yourself. So a lot of those emotional things that hit us when we read poetry come from the fact that we read it out loud and the poet is actually using the meter of a poem to evoke those emotions. If you wonder why you read a poem and it affects you so strongly, it's not just because it may connect to something in your life. It's because the poet may consciously be doing something to the meter of the poem and the word choice in the poem to make you feel that way. They're tricky like that, just so you know. Okay, so once you have your feet and you have them, the meter, you've divided your feet, to figure out the number, so if something is pentameter or what have you, you need to count the feet. However many feet you have overall, like you could have one line that's 3 feet, one line that's 4 feet, another line that's 4 feet, another line that's 5 feet. Because you have 2 4-feet lines, then I would say the poem is tetrameter, even though you have lines that are different, consisting of different types of feet or meter. So it's whatever is predominantly or sort of your overall average that you would call it. As you can see here, I haven't gone beyond a 7-foot line, which is septameter, because you really wouldn't see, I can't really think of any poems off the top of my head, even epic poems that go beyond a 7-foot line. It would be octameter for 8, nonameter for 9, and decameter for 10, but you really don't actually see that in real life, so I haven't included it here. All right, so let's put it all together. What you'll see here is a little snippet of a well-known ditty known as the theme song for Gilligan's Island. So, you'll sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip. The start that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship, right? So you can hear that as I'm reading it out loud, many of you are probably now humming it in your head. But you'll also notice that there is a distinct meter. What you notice also is that based upon where you need to divide your feet, you may also divide it in the middle of a word, right? So if you look at the 3rd line here, tropic is actually divided between feet, as is tiny in the 4th line. So realize that you may need to do that when you're dividing up your feet to figure out that portion of the meter. But overall, what you'll see here is that even though there are a couple of anapestic feet that are squared here, by the majority of what you have scanned, you can see that it is actually an alternating rhyme with one line of 4 feet, which is tetrameter, and one line of 3 feet, which is trimeter. So what you have here is an alternating, so it's iambic, but it's alternating tetrameter, trimeter. It's I guess, a very complicated tune, even though we thought it was very simple. And I'm sure we all feel better knowing this, because I know I do. All right. To review or sum up, scanning is the process of figuring out the metrical structure or rhythm of a poem. Poems are meant to evoke certain emotions, but realize that poetry is a craft. And so poets actually are doing things to make you feel those emotions that you may not normally feel, or this poem may not relate to something you've ever directly experienced. However, you're feeling those emotions that the speaker of the poem is evoking, and you may be wondering why. Well, one of the reasons why may be that the rhythm of the poem and the way that the poet has structured the meter is causing those emotions. And so one of the ways you can figure that out is by scanning. Okay, you need to take the words, look at the poem and take the words individually to determine how many syllables each word has and which ones are stressed or unstressed. Remember, the dictionary is always a good starting point if you're not sure. Once you have figured out to the best of your ability which syllables are stressed and unstressed, then you need to divide them into feet, which means grouping them in groups of 2 or 3. The most common type of recurring foot and the number of them will determine the meter of the poem, whether it ends up being an alternating meter or whether it turns out to be predominantly one type of meter. So if we talk about, again, go back to talking about Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, he may have some trochaic feet in there. There may be an anapest or a dactyl thrown in just to be saucy. However, the predominant feet that you will see are iambs. They are 5-beat lines. So this is why we would say ultimately that Shakespeare writes in iambic pentameter. And now that that great mystery is solved, I will leave you to go off and discover poetry in a new way on your own. Happy scanning!